My name is Savannah Harper. I'm 36 years old. And for most of my life, I believed that keeping the family together was worth almost any sacrifice. I was wrong. The day I finally learned that lesson started with a lunch reservation and ended with me canceling a vacation worth thousands of dollars. But the truth is, it didn't begin that day. It began years earlier. Years of little comments, years of quiet humiliation, years of watching my son, Evan, become the easiest target in the room. My younger sister, Caroline, had a gift for it. She never insulted people directly. Not when adults were paying attention. She preferred jokes, little comments disguised as humor, tiny cuts that were easy to dismiss one at a time. And somehow, those comments almost always landed on Evan. Maybe because he was sensitive, maybe because he was kind, maybe because she knew he wouldn't fight back. Whatever the reason, she seemed to enjoy making him feel small. I noticed it. My parents noticed it. The rest of the family noticed it. But everyone always chose the same solution. Ignore it. Move on. Don't create drama. That strategy lasted until the day something inside me finally snapped. It happened during a family lunch on a sunny Saturday afternoon. Evan was excited from the moment he woke up. He asked me 3 times whether his cousins would be there. He spent extra time choosing his shirt. He even packed 2 small toy dinosaurs because he thought his cousins might want to play with them. Every time he asked if they would be happy to see him, I gave him the same answer. Of course they will. Looking back, I hated how easily that lie came out. When we arrived at the restaurant, most of the family was already there. Caroline sat near the center of the table with her daughters. As usual, she always seemed to place herself exactly where everyone could see her. Evan smiled when he spotted an empty chair. He started walking toward it. Then Caroline lifted her arm, not aggressively, not dramatically, just enough to stop him. The smile on her face looked almost playful. "This table is for good kids only," she said. For a second, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Her daughters immediately laughed. Not nervous laughter. Not confused laughter. The kind of laughter that told me they had heard similar jokes before. Evan froze. His little hand stayed on the back of the chair. The excitement disappeared from his face so quickly, it felt like watching a light switch flip off. "What?" he asked quietly. Caroline shrugged. "I'm kidding." But she wasn't. I knew it. Evan knew it. And deep down, everyone else knew it too. The worst part wasn't what she said. The worst part was the silence afterward. Nobody corrected her. Nobody defended him. Nobody told her it wasn't funny. My mother stared at her menu. My father looked away. Someone changed the subject. And my son stood there trying to understand why nobody cared. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not explode. Not burst. Crack. Like ice breaking under too much weight. I walked over to Evan. I helped him put his jacket back on. He didn't argue. That hurt even more. He was already used to this. Without saying goodbye, we left. The entire ride home was silent. Evan stared out the window. I kept both hands on the steering wheel because I was afraid if I let go, I'd start crying. Halfway home, he finally spoke. "Mom." "Yeah." "Sweetheart, does Aunt Caroline not like me?" The question nearly destroyed me. I swallowed hard. "No." "Then why does she always say things like that?" I didn't have an answer. At least, not one a child deserved to hear. That night, after I tucked Evan into bed, I sat alone in my living room. The house was quiet, but my mind wasn't. Every memory came rushing back. Christmas comments, birthday comments, holiday comments. Every moment I had convinced myself wasn't worth confronting. Every moment I had chosen peace over protection, and suddenly I couldn't justify it anymore. My laptop sat on the coffee table. I opened it. A few clicks later, The family vacation appeared on my screen. A week in the Florida Keys. Private suites. Ocean views. Dolphin encounters. Luxury dinners. Everything prepaid. Everything booked by me. Months of planning. Months of work. Months of saving. Caroline's reservation was right there. I stared at her name. Then I clicked cancel. The confirmation box appeared. I didn't hesitate. I clicked yes. Then I canceled her daughter's activities, the dolphin package, the resort excursions, the upgraded suite, Onebuwan. When I finished, I leaned back in my chair. For the first time, all day, I could breathe. 2 days later, exactly as expected. My phone lit up. Caroline, what's the check-in time again? The girls are getting excited. I stared at the message. No apology. No mention of Evan. Nothing. As if that lunch had never happened. As if my son hadn't gone home wondering why his aunt hated him. I typed my response. My son and I will be going. Your reservations have been canceled. The reply came instantly. What? Then another. You're joking. Then another. You cannot be serious. A moment later, my phone started ringing. Caroline. Again, and again, and again, I let every call go to voicemail. Because I already knew exactly what she was going to say. First, she would pretend not to understand. Then, she would insist it had all been a harmless joke. After that, she would accuse me of being dramatic. And if none of those worked, she would find a way to make herself the victim. I had watched the pattern for years. I wasn't interested in watching it again. The calls kept coming. By evening, she had left 6 voicemails and sent more than a dozen texts. Most of them were angry. A few were desperate. Not one mentioned Evan. That told me everything I needed to know. The next morning, I woke up to a message from my mother. Caroline says, there's been a misunderstanding. Can we talk before anyone does something permanent? I stared at the screen. A misunderstanding. The word almost made me laugh. There had been no misunderstanding when my son stood frozen beside that chair. There had been no misunderstanding when everyone chose silence. There had been no misunderstanding when Caroline mocked him in front of her daughters. I didn't answer. An hour later, my father called. That surprised me. Dad wasn't usually the first person to get involved in family conflicts. He preferred staying in the background, but something in his voice felt different. I answered. He got straight to the point. Tell me exactly what happened. So I did. Every word, every detail. I repeated Caroline's comment exactly as she had said it. I described the look on Evan's face. I described the silence afterward. For a long moment, Dad said nothing. Then he asked quietly, she really said that to him? Yes. And nobody stopped her? No. Another silence. When he finally spoke, his voice had hardened. You were right to cancel the trip. I blinked. For a second, I thought I'd heard him wrong. My father had spent most of his life trying to keep everyone together. Even when someone was clearly wrong, even when it cost him, yet now he sounded disappointed. Not in me. In here? I heard Mom asking questions in the background. Dad repeated the story to her. The room on the other end of the phone suddenly became very quiet. Then he said something I never expected. If someone treated one of my children like that, I wouldn't want to vacation with them either. When the call ended, I sat in silence. For the first time, somebody besides me had finally acknowledged what was happening. That afternoon, Caroline sent another message, a much angrier one. So now you're turning Mom and Dad against me. A second text followed. You're punishing innocent children because you're holding a grudge. Then another. Hope Evan enjoys his lonely vacation. I stared at the words. Not once had she apologized. Not once had she admitted she crossed a line. She wasn't upset about hurting Evan. She was upset because there were consequences. I sent one final response. This isn't punishment. It's a boundary. Evan deserves better. Then I blocked her number, for the first time in years. The silence felt peaceful. The next day, my mother called, not to defend Caroline, not to negotiate. She asked if she could talk to Evan. When I handed him the phone, I listened from the kitchen. Her voice trembled. She apologized. A real apology. Not the kind that starts with, "I'm sorry you felt that way." She told him he hadn't done anything wrong. She told him he was kind. She told him she loved him. Most importantly, she told him she should have spoken up. Evan didn't say much, but when he handed me the phone, he was smiling. That smile alone made every uncomfortable conversation worth it. 4 days later, we boarded our flight. The moment we stepped onto the plane, something shifted. Maybe because there were no family politics. No criticism. No tension. Just me and my son. Evan carried his shark-shaped neck pillow everywhere. He kept asking questions about dolphins. Questions about the ocean. Questions about whether fish slept at night. Questions only a child could think of. I answered every one. Because for once, I wasn't distracted by anyone else's drama. When we arrived in the Florida Keys, Evan practically bounced through the resort lobby. Palm trees swayed outside. The ocean glittered beyond the windows. The staff greeted him by name because I had mentioned it was his first major trip. His eyes widened. They know who I am. I laughed. Of course they do. For the first time in months, he looked completely carefree. The first day disappeared in a blur of swimming pools and sandy beaches. The second day was turtles, boat rides, and ice cream. But the third day became the memory neither of us would ever forget. Dolphin Day. Evan woke up before sunrise. He was already dressed when I opened my eyes. His excitement was contagious. At the marina, we joined several other families. One family stood out immediately. A couple with 2 children, a teenage daughter and a little boy around Evan's age. The younger boy introduced himself within minutes. The two of them immediately started talking about Minecraft, then sea creatures, then video games again. Within an hour, they were inseparable. Watching Evan laugh, without hesitation, felt almost surreal. There was no nervousness, no fear of being mocked, no looking over his shoulder, just happiness, pure happiness. Laughter. When the dolphin swam beside him, I thought he might actually burst from excitement. The trainers helped him touch one gently. The dolphin chirped. Evan laughed so hard, he nearly lost his balance. That moment alone was worth every dollar I had spent. That night, after he fell asleep watching a movie, I finally checked my phone. 15 unread messages, several missed calls, and a social media notification. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. Caroline had written an entire public post, a dramatic one. She never used my name. She didn't need to. She talked about family betrayal, about innocent children being punished, about selfish relatives ruining vacations. Predictably, many of her friends rushed to support her. Comments filled with sympathy, comments calling her strong, comments insisting she deserved better. For a few minutes, I felt sick. Then, I kept scrolling. And everything changed. One of our cousins had commented, "Maybe tell the whole story." Another relative replied beneath it, "That's not what Uncle David said happened." Then I found a comment that made me sit upright. It came from one of Caroline's own stepchildren, a teenager who had witnessed the lunch. "You were mean to Evan. We all saw it. You do this all the time." I read it twice, then 3 times. The comment continued, "This is why people are upset. Stop pretending you don't know why." My heart pounded, because something important had just happened. For years, Caroline controlled the story. She decided what everyone believed. She rewrote events until she became the victim. But now people were challenging her publicly. For the first time, the narrative wasn't hers anymore. The next morning, I received a message from my cousin Sarah. She had seen everything. She had spoken with my father, and she wanted me to know something. What she said stayed with me. You showed Evan that someone will stand up for him. That's going to matter long after he forgets the vacation. I stared at the message for a long time. The ocean rolled outside our balcony. Evan slept peacefully inside our room. And suddenly, I realized this wasn't really about Caroline anymore. It wasn't even about the canceled trip. It was about a little boy learning that he mattered, that he was worth protecting, that someone would choose him every single time. What I didn't realize then was that the vacation was only the beginning, because while Evan and I were building memories under the Florida sun, Caroline was losing control of something she had spent years carefully protecting, her image. And once the cracks appeared, the truth started pouring through faster than either of us expected. By the time Evan and I returned home, Caroline's social media post had become the center of multiple family conversations. She had deleted the original post, but screenshots live forever. Relatives were passing them around in private messages. Questions were being asked, and for the first time, people weren't accepting her version of events without challenge. What surprised me most wasn't the criticism. It was the stories, one after another. They started surfacing. My cousin Tessa messaged me first. She told me about a Christmas party years earlier. Her daughter had been struggling with reading. Instead of encouraging her, Caroline had laughed and suggested she stop pretending to be confused for attention. At the time, everyone had brushed it off. Another family friend shared a similar memory. When her son gained weight during middle school, Caroline repeatedly made comments disguised as concern. The boy had cried in the car afterward. There were more, so many more. Different events, different victims. The same pattern. Each story by itself sounded small. Together, they painted something much larger. Abby, a choice. A way of treating people she considered weaker. For years, everyone had tolerated it because confronting it seemed harder than ignoring it. Now that silence was disappearing. Predictably, Caroline didn't handle it well. 3 days after our return, she sent me a voice message, nearly 4 minutes long. I listened to it once. That was enough. She accused me of manipulating our parents. She accused me of turning the family against her. She accused me of using Evan's feelings as a weapon. Not once did she mention the possibility that she might have been wrong. I deleted the message. That same evening, my parents invited both of us to dinner. The invitation alone told me something important. This wasn't going to be a casual family meal. This was an intervention. I arranged for Evan to stay with my neighbor. Then I drove to my parents' house. Caroline was already there. She sat at the dining room table, with her arms crossed. The expression on her face suggested she believed she was the victim of a conspiracy. Mom served coffee. Dad skipped the small talk entirely. He looked directly at Caroline. What exactly did you mean when you told Evan the table was for good kids only? She rolled her eyes immediately. It was a joke. Dad didn't react. Was it a funny joke? Silence. She shifted in her chair. You're making way too much out of this. Mom spoke next. Her voice was softer than Dad's, but somehow more painful. I watched his face when you said it. Caroline looked away. Mom continued. I haven't stopped thinking about it. For the first time, I saw genuine guilt in my mother's eyes. Not defensive guilt. Not embarrassed guilt. The kind that comes from realizing you failed someone you love. She looked down at her coffee. I should have said something. The room became very quiet. Dad leaned forward. This isn't really about one comment. Caroline immediately interrupted. Exactly. No, he said firmly. It's about years of comments. That stopped her. For a moment, she looked genuinely surprised. As if she had never considered that people remembered. Dad continued, "We've all seen it. We ignored it because we wanted peace. That was a mistake." Caroline laughed bitterly. "So now everyone's protecting this sensitive kid." The words hung in the air. Mom's expression hardened. "He's a child." Nobody spoke. Finally, Dad laid out new boundaries. Family gatherings would be different moving forward. No insults disguised as jokes. No targeting children. No sarcasm intended to embarrass people. And if anyone couldn't respect those rules, they wouldn't be welcome. The message wasn't subtle. Everyone understood who it was aimed at. Caroline stood up so abruptly, her chair scraped the floor. "This is ridiculous." Nobody responded. "I'm being ganged up on." Still, nobody responded. She grabbed her purse, called us all crazy, then stormed out. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle a picture frame. Nobody followed her. That was new. For years, someone would have chased after her. Not this time. A few minutes later, Mom looked at me. "We should have done this sooner." I nodded, because she was right. The week after that dinner felt strange. Not dramatic, not explosive, just different. The family dynamic had shifted. People were finally acknowledging things that had always existed. My aunt removed Caroline from the 4th of July planning group. No explanation, no debate. She simply texted me afterward. "We don't need that energy." A few days later, my Aunt Margaret invited Evan and me to the annual Lake House weekend. Normally, invitations went through Caroline because she loved organizing everything. This time, the invitation came directly to me. The message made me smile. "Bring whatever snacks Evan likes. We already saved the downstairs bedroom for you two." The downstairs bedroom, the best room in the house. For years, Evan and I had been stuck in the cramped attic loft, while Caroline's family claimed the nicest spaces. The change wasn't about the room. It was about being considered, being chosen, being welcomed. Meanwhile, Caroline continued trying to control the narrative online. She posted photographs from a budget beach motel, with captions about family betrayal. She shared quotes about fake people and hidden truth. Every post carried the same message: poor Caroline, cruel family, unfair treatment. The strategy backfired almost immediately. Under one post, Tessa commented, "Love also means not bullying your nephew." The comment disappeared within minutes. Then Caroline made her profile private. That only made people talk more. A few days later, another unexpected development occurred. The biological mother of Caroline's stepsons publicly corrected one of her stories. Apparently, Caroline had implied the boys supported her. They didn't. Their mother posted that neither boy had wanted to attend the canceled vacation. The internet did what the internet always does. People noticed, people talked, people connected dots. Meanwhile, something much more important was happening. Evan was healing. The change wasn't dramatic. It happened in little moments. He started drawing more. He laughed more. He stopped asking whether people secretly disliked him. One afternoon, he spread several dolphin photographs across the kitchen table. "I think I want to study ocean animals." I smiled. "A marine biologist." His eyes lit up. "Yeah." The dream sounded huge. Wonderful. Exactly the kind of dream children should have. The kind they only share when they feel safe. A few days later, Dad invited him fishing. Just the two of them. No cousine. No distractions. No competition for attention. When they returned, Evan was carrying a small tackle box. His name had been written across the front in permanent marker. He treated it like treasure. "Grandpa says, next time, we'll try night fishing." "Oh yeah. He says you can see stars reflected in the water." That evening I sat outside with a cup of tea. The sun was setting. The neighborhood was quiet. And for the first time in years, I wasn't anxious about the next family gathering. I wasn't wondering what Caroline might say. I wasn't preparing excuses. I wasn't bracing for impact. The space she once occupied was slowly being filled with something else. Peace. But deep down, I knew the story wasn't finished. Because people like Caroline rarely accept losing control. They wait, they regroup, they look for another opportunity. And 3 weeks after our vacation, that opportunity arrived in the form of a family dinner. My mother described as a chance to keep things normal. The moment she said it, I knew exactly what was about to happen. And I knew Caroline would show up. The moment Mom described it as a chance to keep things normal, I knew exactly what was about to happen. And I knew Caroline would show up. Officially, she wasn't invited. At least, not from what my parents told me. But Caroline had never been the kind of person who accepted exclusion. She believed every room belonged to her, every gathering, every conversation, every family event. So when the evening arrived, I wasn't surprised. The dinner started peacefully. There were only 8 of us. Mom moved between the kitchen and dining room. Dad was telling one of his favorite stories from college. My cousin Matt laughed at the same punchline he laughed at every year. And Evan stood beside my mother helping slice cucumbers. He looked happy, comfortable, safe. The kind of safe I had spent years trying to give him. For a while, everything felt normal. Then the front door opened. No knock, no warning, just the sound of the handle turning. The room immediately went quiet. Caroline stepped inside. She carried herself with the confidence of someone expecting everyone else to adjust, as though the past month had never happened, as though no damage had been done, as though she had simply taken a short vacation from the family drama she had created. She walked into the dining room, dropped her purse onto the counter, and smiled. "I'm tired of all this nonsense," she announced. Nobody answered. She looked around the room. "I'm ready to move forward." That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement. No responsibility. Not even a hint of regret. Just a declaration. A command disguised as reconciliation. The old version of me might have stayed quiet. The old version of me might have worried about keeping the peace. The old version of me might have swallowed the anger and waited for the moment to pass. But that woman no longer existed. I stood up slowly. My voice remained calm, almost gentle. "You're not welcome here tonight." The room froze. Caroline blinked. For a second, she looked genuinely confused, as if she couldn't process hearing the word no. "What? You're not welcome here." The words came easier the second time. She laughed nervously. "Seriously? Yes?" Silence spread across the room. I looked directly at her. "You don't get to treat my son like he doesn't matter, and then walk in, expecting everything to reset." Her smile disappeared. She turned toward our mother, waiting, expecting. Mom didn't move, didn't speak, didn't rescue her. Caroline's eyes shifted toward Dad. He simply looked back at her. The disappointment in his expression said everything. No defense, no excuses, no escape route. For the first time in her life, she was standing alone. The realization hit her visibly. Color drained from her face. Then anger replaced it. This family is unbelievable. Nobody responded. She grabbed her purse. "You've all lost your minds." Still, nobody responded. As she headed toward the door, she muttered something under her breath. Probably another insult. Maybe another complaint about being treated unfairly. I honestly didn't care. The door closed behind her. And that was it. No screaming match. No dramatic showdown. No final battle. Just a door closing. A boundary being enforced. A consequence finally arriving. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Dad cleared his throat, looked at Evan, and asked, "Think you can help me serve the lemonade?" Evan grinned. "Yep." Just like that. Dinner continued. No discussion, no analysis, no obsession over Caroline's reaction. Life moved forward, and for the first time, she wasn't at the center of it. Later that night, after Evan had gone to bed, I sat alone at my kitchen table. The house was dark. The silence felt different now. Not tense, not uncertain, peaceful. I opened my laptop, started writing. The email wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. And it certainly wasn't meant to start a fight. It was simply the truth. I addressed it to the extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even relatives I rarely spoke to. Then I wrote, I want to make something clear moving forward. Evan and I will not be attending events where Caroline is present. This is not about revenge. It is not about drama. And it is not an attempt to force anyone to choose sides. It is about protecting my son. He deserves to be treated with kindness and respect. I won't debate this decision. I won't explain it repeatedly. And I won't apologize for it. This is a boundary. I read it twice. Then I hit send. For a moment I wondered if I had gone too far. The answer arrived faster than I expected. The first reply came from my cousin Sarah, proud of you. The second came from Aunt Margaret, completely understand. Then another, and another, and another, within an hour. My inbox was full. Most were short, simple, supportive. One message from my cousin Matt made me laugh out loud. Honestly, family gatherings have been a lot easier lately. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. Not victory. Relief. Because this had never been about defeating Caroline. It wasn't about humiliating her. It wasn't about revenge. For a long time I thought I wanted accountability, but sitting there that night, I realized what I actually wanted was freedom. Freedom from the constant tension. Freedom from the excuses. Freedom from wondering whether my son would be the next target. Over the following months, that freedom changed everything. Family events became smaller, quieter, kinder. Evan stopped dreading gatherings. He stopped asking whether people were angry with him. He laughed more, talked more, dreamed more. His interest in marine biology only grew stronger. Our refrigerator slowly filled with drawings of dolphins, sea turtles, and coral reefs. Every time I looked at them, I remembered the little boy standing beside that restaurant chair, the little boy wondering why he wasn't good enough. And I remembered the promise I silently made to him that day. Never again. One evening, months later, we sat on the back porch, watching the sunset. Evan looked up at me. Mom, yeah, remember the dolphin trip? I smiled. Of course. It was the best vacation ever. For a second, I thought about correcting him, about explaining that it wasn't really the vacation that mattered. It was everything that came after. The boundaries, the healing, the protection, the love. But then I looked at his smile and realized he already understood more than I thought. So I simply nodded. It was pretty amazing. He leaned his head against my shoulder, and together we watched the sky turn gold. We never got the big family vacation we originally planned. We never got the picture-perfect family everyone pretended we had. What we got was something better. A quieter life. A safer life. A life where my son knew he belonged. A life where he knew someone would always stand up for him. And in the end, that was worth far more than any luxury resort could ever offer.